Hi there, it's Daniel from GrowingMusicStudio.com, and I have with me today, in the first of several videos I think that he and I are going to create over July, I have Greg of the Piano Express and GroupLessons.com. And here this month, over the next couple of weeks, we're going to look at a couple of topics, some areas of concern, some areas where Greg has a unique perspective on teaching and education. And we're just going to dive into these topics. And today is the topic of being underutilized as a professional throughout our career.
Mm.
Greg, you had an interesting analogy when we started talking about how you're running group lessons in your studio. And I
Mhm.
don't want to steal your thunder. I'm just going to have you jump into it. But you made an analogy to a another profession, and how we as piano teachers or as music teachers can begin to feel like that profession. So that's all I'm going to say. I think you should just jump into it and tell me how you came about thinking this way. And what's a good way to get
Right.
into this? Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think pretty philosophically, especially about feelings, and I, I, when I work with students, I want to be calm, collected. I do not want to lose my top. I don't want to like become so frustrated that I start like losing control of my behavior, temper, anything like that. We've all through our schooling, we've had teachers who were angry teachers, or
Yes.
you could make them angry and then they were like Jekyll to Hyde. And I don't want to be that teacher. And so I
Sure.
actually think pretty philosophically about anger. Like if I feel like with me, with when I get angry, sometimes I'll get a little bit intense. At my worst, I might become condescending, and I don't want to
Okay.
be that I don't want to be that
Sure.
teacher. And so I think when that happens, I'll go back later in the day and I'll be like, why did that happen? Why did I start to feel that way? Sometimes when I'm trying to explain a concept to the child and they just don't get it, and I'm like, you know, I'm not angry that the child can't get it. I'm angry that I can't figure out how to explain it. It's like I'm angry at
Hmm.
myself. I'm frustrated myself. Why should I take any of that frustration out on that
The
child, right?
student. Yeah, on the
That
student.
so I keep it in. So early in my career, I started like teaching basics. This is a half note. This is a quarter note. So these are quarters. That's a half note.
Right.
Okay. And now you try. No,
Oh.
no, it was a half note. Now, the first time that ever happened to me, that was cute. I was like, "Oh, isn't that sweet?" They heard the
Right.
half. They thought that was two beats. Now you only held it for one beat. Now let's try again. Right? No, 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 no. Hold it for two beats. I did hold it for two beats. One, two. I'm like, well, that's not how beats work. What's going on? Okay, now fast forward a year into my career, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. There is like a trigger. There's like, because I'm not hearing this for the first time or the 10th time. This is the millionth time. And so
But of
there's this,
course, it's the first time for that student, but not for
yes,
you.
yes, yes. But then there's this like, for the love of all that's good and right, it's a half note, right? And I'm not going to name names. Of course, no one here is going to know who's who anyways, but I go to teacher meetings. I feel like one of the best ways for me to learn as a teacher is to go to meetings with other teachers. So I'm involved with my local chapter of MTNA, that's Northern Virginia Music Teachers Association. And sometimes I'll get in these little group chats and it's just moaning and like complaining about how their students. I was at a conversation one time where people were sitting in a circle just talking about posture, okay, students that slouch when they play. And one teacher said that she had a yardstick that she would stick down the back of the shirt of her children. And I was like, is she joking? That seems a little extreme. And she's like, and if I see one more student slouch, I'm going to stick that yardstick in the freezer first. And everyone laughed. Everyone thought that was fun because we all
Wow.
got it. We are sick and tired of slouching children because it's not the first time we've seen it. It's the million for those of us that get more experienced. But the philosophical side of me, the part of me that wants to be a fair teacher to my student, it's like they don't deserve the accumulation of years of me seeing this problem dumped on them on their first day.
And
I have to
so,
stay, I have to stay fresh. I
yeah,
started I started to think, why does this bother me in the first place? Right. And so all the way back to, I still remember your question, Daniel.
okay,
Why does it bother me? It's honestly because I feel like I am overqualified to tell a student that a half note is 2 beats, or to tell a student that they have to sit up straight, or to tell a student that a line to a space is a step and not a skip, or a line to a line is a skip and not a step. I am overqualified to do that. Daniel, we went to the same college. I saw your senior recital, you saw mine. I had Beethoven sonatas, you had La Campanella. We're way beyond quarter notes and half notes. And so for us, not just a small part of our day, but over and over and over through the years, we have to come back to this conversation. A half note's 2 beats, not
yeah,
one. It's just
yeah.
like the more you see students bounce against that and go the other way, it grates against you, right?
And so there either needs to be a new solution, or we all need to like practice deep mindfulness and meditation every day so that we're not bothered by this. So,
I'll tell you who has you finish your thought, but I'll tell you who has it figured out. The profession that hasn't figured out. But go ahead. You were going to say something.
well, that's where I was getting to, because
Okay.
I think because I know where you're going.
Okay. So the people that have it figured out are dentists. Okay. Because when you go in to see the dentist, you don't see the dentist. You see the hygienist, and the hygienist just brushes your teeth for you and flosses your teeth and takes out the scraper and scrapes your teeth. And if your gums bleed, then they kind of my hygienist will harass me for not flossing. She's like, "You're not flossing enough, are you?" And I get a guilt trip, right? The dentist could do all of those things.
He's very qualified.
He or she.
Yeah. Or you could say that he or she is overqualified, like you were illuminating before. So where are we going with this?
The reason why dentists don't scrape your teeth is because they're overqualified to scrape your teeth. Honestly, I have no idea what a dentist even does. They look at the photos and the X-rays, and they tell you whether you have diseases or something. Like they have their, I don't know what you learn in dentist school, but whatever they learned qualifies them for whatever they do. And I know that it's not brushing your teeth, flossing your teeth, scraping your teeth, and complaining that you don't floss, right?
So the implication here is that this, and I agree with you, honestly, I agree that we're probably overqualified to answer for the 87,000th time that you need to hold the half note. I know in my own studio, I'm just going to kind of make this personal for a second. One of the ways I overcame this challenge, although I never overcame it completely, was just with a strong focus on sight reading at the beginning and kind of making those kids more independent. I imagine another way you could do this would be to hire teachers to only teach the beginners, to insulate yourself from those students, and then only take really advanced students later. And I think this is where I'm going to jump in with, I mean, I've had conversations with at least 1,000 studio owners over the last couple of years. And one of the things that comes up over and over again when I ask them, like, well, what kind of studio do you want to make? What do you want to build? And they say, oh, when I market, I only want to take good students. I want you to help me design a marketing system that helps me to find only committed students. And that's where I kind of have to break it to them that you actually have to build those students yourself. That's not something that's just out there as a commodity that can be found. Like, as the teacher, you have to, you're the one who makes a good student,
Right.
But I think there's this, the typical problems, the slow first couple years, the loss of the lesson during the week. They've had the lesson, and then they go home and they forget 3/4 of the lesson, and they come back second week and you're kind of reteaching what you taught the week before, maybe even the week before that. Like, there's these challenges that keep us from progressing these students faster. And I think we've all found different ways to solve it. Certainly, I've gone on record quite a bit saying how I did that for my studio, but and I'm going to get to you in just a second. Like, I'm more interested in hearing your solution, because it's not something that's been talked about too much, because, for the last couple of years, I've been talking, now I'm having you on here on this video to, for you to talk. But, we end up seeing an endless parade of beginners as music teachers oftentimes if we don't overcome some of these problems that we're talking about here. So, Greg, this is why I think it'd be really interesting for you to start kind of getting into how you solved the dental assistant versus dentist problem, and how you overcame this emotional challenge of like that accumulated frustration of years of teaching. So let's hear it.
And lucky for me, I figured this out pretty early on. So I was still in my 20s when I started moving this over. So I didn't want to turn into like an old cranky bitter teacher or anything like that. And so I started to really understand what software could do, what software could take off of my plate. And I was years and years ago, I was actually at a demonstration for there was a piano retail store in my town, and they were demonstrating a new model of Roland digital pianos. And Roland, I mean, what they do with MIDI technology has always been, historically they've just been doing some of the most cutting edge things.
Yeah.
And they were showing how you could get into the hardware of the piano and compose your own songs. You could create background tracks. Students could play along to those background tracks, and the piano would give you a score, like an accuracy grade. And I was like looking at that, and I was like, that would be so fun for the kids. And then I wouldn't have to argue with them whether their half notes were holding for 2 beats. The machine could do it. And then it would be 2 against 1, me and the machine against the one student. And now I have like a team on my side. And so I started to think, what could I offload from me? What could I have that it's like I could put something first, something that just helps do the scraping and cleaning and the things that I felt like I was overqualified to do. And I don't want to say that there's things that are beneath me. All I'm saying is I only have a certain amount of time in a day, in a week, in what I do with my time. If I can stay at a higher level, if I can be teaching musicality, understanding the art form of music, technique theory, if I can be the teacher that I want to be, because I'm dealing with the concepts that I feel are truly at my expertise, the things that I passionately studied in school so that I could be qualified to teach. It's like I want to be at that level more. And I want to stay out of this level more. And so how can I move some things over to a machine so that me as a teacher, I can stay up at this level?
Well, okay. So I have a question about that. Before we go there though, I think, it's all, one of the things that is spoken about in terms of group lessons is the financial piece and how you can scale and that sort of thing. But what you're talking about there is actually a little bit different than that. You're talking about scaling the effectiveness of your time. And there's different ways that a studio can scale. Oftentimes people hear, oh, you scale a studio means you hire staff, you get a commercial location, you have support team members, you have admin, you have teachers, you have just all these different types of workers that can work alongside you. But we're talking just at the educational level. There's a way to make your time, the usage of your time, more effective. That goes beyond just like, oh, let's stuff a bunch of kids in one room and then I'm going to try to teach them all. Like, if you do that, there has to be something there. I know for my group system that it really relied on a series of rules for the teacher, and how I was to conduct myself and how to use my time. And I've taught those rules to hundreds of studios. But for you, it sounds like you just went a different route, and you went this route of using, quote unquote, the machine to do that
to maximize
cleaning work,
my time,
to maximize your time.
Yes. In my mind, I have the word assessment. Okay, assessment is, did you practice properly? Are you ready for new music, or do you need to keep these songs longer, and here's what you need to adjust and correct? Assessments. And then there's everything else. There's like the the teaching of technique, foundational theory, understanding music as an art form, understanding how to approach a piece from a musical artistic point of view. And so there's like higher shelf, lower shelf, and they're both necessary, right? But I really wanted to maximize my time by putting myself in a position where I had more time to be here, because I found ways of guiding students through here, apart from me. And there was technology, and also teacher assistance. And so those two things put together allowed me to be here, and then students to still get what they needed over here. But there was, it's just the people and the machines, and all the pieces that were doing their best job were in their best place.
Interesting. So I think we've been hearing, for I guess the past 10 minutes or so, the pros of this.
Mm-hmm.
Have you identified any cons, like in terms of pros and cons, like by handing off? And I actually really have no idea what you're going to say here. Like we didn't pre-rehearse this or anything. Like,
right.
is there any downside to having, the teeth cleaning, so to speak, by having some of these lower level musical skills be graded or judged by a piece of software versus a human?
Is there any downside to it? I would say every once in a while there is a student who might be experiencing a problem, a specific problem, and I'm not the first to know. I'll sometimes I'll catch on later, but I work with teacher assistants. They're part of my like in this dentist hygienist. They're part of the hygienist model. Sometimes they know what specific things are, and so a parent will talk to me and say, hey, there was this issue, very specific, like in this measure, in this song, what's going on? And I'll just be like, where's my TA? Come
right.
help me with this conversation.
Right.
So sometimes there's that.
Okay. And I'll just say, for anyone who's watching this now, Greg went into a lot more detail about the entirety of this situation, the whole picture of a studio and how it runs. In a recent podcast we did, the Seven Figure Music School podcast, was released at the end of June. And I would, if this is interesting to you, he goes into great detail on like the how and the why and the what of how his studio works, who he hires, how they can see 300 kids per week with just 2 teachers and a handful of assistants. All that is covered in that podcast. We're not really trying to retread that ground here. We're really just trying to focus on this one narrow aspect of the quality of life of being a music teacher, and how we can kind of, perhaps we can graduate beyond just fixing half notes for the rest of our career. Right. So Greg, is there anything else? I felt like you took a breath there to start saying something. Like I was going to say, is there anything else before we end this video?
Well, I would just say, for all the teachers out there, really, I would encourage you to get a little philosophical with yourself. And if you notice in your own teaching there are things that frustrate you, don't just let it be as a norm. Don't get used to that. Don't let it become normal. Question and push back and get creative and try to find solutions, because it makes you a better teacher for your students, and it makes you a happier teacher. It makes you enjoy your day to day.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to wrap here. As I mentioned at the outset, throughout this month, we're going to be releasing a series of videos just looking at the wisdom that Greg has picked up and doing a very unique form of group lessons over the past decade and a half. And if you want more information about Greg or that system, go to check out grouplessons.com. And he really goes in depth there on what this software is and how it helped them ladder their studio up to hundreds of students with just a couple of teachers. Usually you hear of a studio with 300 students and you're thinking, oh, there must be at least 20 to 25 teachers working there. They have 2. So it's really a powerful tool. And I'm endlessly fascinated by it, but also just, I like to kind of explore the differences in how different people do group lessons and things of that nature. So yeah, some of the other topics we're going to cover this month is how a single teacher studio can ladder up, how to set up a group system in your studio, and how to get your students at your studio to actually practice and pass songs at home, and how possible is that in different models of instruction. So a lot of good topics that we're going to cover this month, you and me, and I think between the two of us, we should be able to cover a lot of ground. So we'll see you all. We'll see you all in the next video.